What's up, guys? Yes, the rumors are true. I've been telling y'all for months, man, that I was gonna get a daily digital show going, and here we are. So, for the people who've been hiding under a rock and don't know me, I'm James Hill, owner of Black Millionaires, and I've been doing this brand for so long. And all you guys been asking me, y'all always ask me my perspective on things, and I usually try to, shy away from just giving my perspective because I'm more of a. It's weird. I'm more of a outgoing person, but I'm like an introvert and extrovert. I don't know if it's a name for that, but 2025, I'm breaking out my shell. I'm coming out, giving y'all all the raw, the perspective that I have, and I also have a wonderful co-host who I want y'all to meet and embrace and run up the numbers because we're coming together to build this digital daily show. We're going to be doing it a couple times a week. I'm not gonna make any promises, but I know y'all gonna hold us to the fire. So we're gonna talk about a bunch of different topics. If you guys got any topics you want us to talk about, make sure you send that to us in a DM. I know you're gonna do that. But we got a bunch of topics we want to talk about today. But enough about me and the show. Let's talk about the wonderful co-host and get to know her, and then we're gonna jump into the topics.
Well, thanks, James, for having me. I'm Shorty Mack. Some people know me for being a media personality. I got a long history with Atlanta radio, did a lot of television. Broadcasting is pretty much my background. But a lot of people don't know that I am a big champion for financial literacy.
Mm-hmm.
And behind the scenes, I help and coach a lot of people in how to start businesses, how to become homeowners, how to save money, how to budget.
Yeah.
So I'm a big, like I said, champion and advocate for financial literacy. So being able to join you on this platform when that's what you've been doing for a long time
Yeah.
is quite the honor. I'm a big fan of all your work and what you're trying to do. Just create equity out here in the world. So
Yeah.
I'm definitely glad to be here and super excited to contribute in any way that I can.
It's crazy because we've been following each other for a while, but I believe when we actually connected and had our first communication was when I was doing my conference, and I was looking for somebody to. I believe I was looking for somebody to not co-host. I was looking for somebody to
Red carpet.
red carpet,
Yeah.
and I don't know what ever happened to that. I don't think I don't know what happened, but I had hundreds of people filled out stuff, and you were one of the people who were like qualified, and like I don't know what happened, but we didn't go through with it, but we stayed connected. I stayed connected. You had a show at that time,
Yeah.
and I was watching the show, and I was just like, oh, this is really cool. And when I thought about this, I wrote down a few names, and I'm like, I definitely got to circle back with her. But then I was kind of nervous because I'm like, well, she was doing her show, so she might be busy. I know she, a vet in the game, so she got a lot going on. So I'm like, man, let me just reach out to her. And I told you, I tried to reach out to you, and the email that you had, it bounced, and it was like, oh, the email is full. I'm like, oh my god. I reached out on Twitter. You probably not even active on Twitter.
Barely.
I DM'd you on Twitter, and then I'm like, then I think I DM'd you on Instagram again, and I'm like, is she ignoring me? Like, what's good? Like, I'm like, hold on,
Nah,
like what's
never
good?
that.
And you hit me back, and you just like, here's my number. Let's get connected. And we connected, and now we're coming together to build the show. So I appreciate you spending the time with me and the audience. But let's jump into these topics. You talked about home ownership. I want to jump straight into that because you say you own a few different properties, and that's kind of your focus on educating people on that. And for the people who don't know, I'm a former mortgage banker. I worked at Rocket Mortgage. It was Quicken Loans before it went public and became Rocket Mortgage. So I was a purchase banker there for 2 years before I left and started my own company. So I know a lot of the ins and outs of real estate, and I have a few different perspectives on real estate. So I wanted to know, how do you feel about home ownership in general?
So that's a great question, and I think that my opinion on home ownership isn't really one track.
Mm-hmm.
I think that home ownership is overall easier than it's presented and what people think. So if you're somebody who really has ambitions to own a home, just know that you can.
Yeah.
And when I was coming up, it was always presented to me like, oh, you want to buy a house, you need to have 20% to put down.
Oh man.
And if you have 20% to put down, that's a wonderful thing, right? If you have more than 20% to put down, that's an even better thing.
Yeah.
But I think that there is a wide misconception that if you don't have 20% down, now you're eliminated. And that's not necessarily the case. There's all these different products in terms of lending, and you know
Yeah.
that from being, selling mortgages.
Yeah.
So I think that home ownership, first of all, has to be your own personal ambition. You can't be doing it because it's the thing to do. Other people are doing
It's
it.
popular.
Or, yeah, don't.
Financial literacy. I just want to get a house just to get a house. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's not always the win. Sometimes renting is the win. It depends on your situation, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of hidden costs with home ownership. So you have to understand
Oh,
that.
let's talk about it.
Right? So when at one point I was renting, I was paying probably $400 more than what I ended up paying when I got a mortgage.
Yeah.
So initially, I was like, oh, this is going to be great, right? But then there's all these hidden costs. You don't have a landlord anymore. So if your water heater goes out, you've got to pay for that yourself.
Yeah.
Anything that you have to fix, your yard work, all of that. So I think that you have to look at the overall cost of it, the immediate initial cost, and then
Yeah.
also the extended long-term cost. And so once you crunch those numbers, you'll have a better understanding if home ownership is for you or not. But just know that if you do want to buy a home, you can do it. You should really do your due diligence about products.
Now, what's your thoughts on the whole starter home, like getting a starter home? Like,
I think getting a starter home is great.
see here, and this is the problem with my perspective is the perspective the advice that I would take is different than the advice that I would give to the masses or the everyday people. Like me personally, I don't really want to start a home. Like either I'm going to stay in my high rise penthouse until I can afford the mansion I want to build. That's just me. But I'm also a risky entrepreneur who's been full time as an entrepreneur for the last 5 years. And I'm swinging for the fences. So I always tell people I'm gonna either be broke when I'm 65 or I'm gonna be filthy rich.
Right.
It's like it's no in between because I'm taking a lot of gambles, and I don't think everybody should live like that. So what I would tell myself is, no, don't get a home. Put that money back into the business. Like you said, it's a lot of different hidden costs. So all that money the return you would get from owning a home is a lot lower than the return you would get for investing in your business. But everybody don't have a business.
There you go.
So that's the problem I have with, giving out the advice that I personally take is everybody's not James Hill. Everybody don't have a media startup that's, trying to take over the world and traveling all over the world. Some people just at their regular job. And when I say regular job, that's not a bad thing, right?
Not at all.
Because you can get rich from a job. You can make millions from a job. You can make your dreams become reality from a job. So it's two ways to skin it. There's multiple ways to get to your goal. My way is just entrepreneur full time. I would rather hire 2 employees than put that money into a house because the 2 employees are going to help me make 10x the money that I'm paying them versus what I'm putting into the house.
Yeah.
However, I do own real estate. So I have a rental property. I have a project over the next, 12 months that I'm going to be investing in. And I was going to rent it out, but I think I'm going to turn it into an Airbnb. I don't know if you ever did Airbnb, but I think I'm going to dabble into the Airbnb space. And we're going to see,
Yeah.
I don't want to sell the house. It's a property that I inherited. So got that sentimental value, even though as a business person, you don't supposed to be emotions, but like my grandma touched my hand and said, Granddaddy wouldn't want you to sell the house, so I'm not going to sell it.
And that's a wonderful privilege that a lot of people don't have. A lot of people are not getting properties passed down to them.
Yeah.
I understand your perspective from being an entrepreneur. Like you said, everybody doesn't have a business. So if you're a regular person and you don't own a business, I think that compound interest is the best way to get money. And, real estate and the stock market are 2 ways to get compound interest. So I think if you're a regular person, home ownership and owning real estate is going to be the quickest way for you to amass a large amount of money.
Yeah.
Depending on the market, of course, that always matters, right? But if the market is in a good place, I don't know. I mean, I know I had like $100,000 in equity off of one property in 2 years.
Yeah.
I don't know where else I could have just made
Made
$100,000,
in
and
two
I'm not
years. So that's
going.
50 grand a year.
Yeah, I'm not going somewhere every single day to put in work, right? I'm sleeping and I'm making money.
Yeah.
So there aren't a ton of appreciating assets out here in the world, period.
Yeah.
Real estate is one of those. So I think that if you are a family, if you're an individual person and you want to gain equity, I think that home ownership is a great way to do it. But just know that you're going to always have hidden costs. You're always going to put a lot of money into it. Taxes go up. You're not locked into anything. So even if you have a fixed rate mortgage, your insurance and property
Oh my
taxes
God,
are going to go up
insurance
every
is
year.
ridiculous now. You know, we got
Exponentially.
the LA fires or whatever. I can only imagine how their insurance is. My property is in Michigan. We don't have these type of natural disasters, and the insurance is crazy. I had to talk to like 10 different companies. Even the person that I got bundled with my auto insurance, they don't even want to touch it, and I'm just like, it's ridiculous how much people are paying. And I feel like the insurance, and people don't know this when they talk about redlining and gentrification, it's really the insurance companies that gentrify and redline places because, like, I'm from Detroit. They don't, a lot of the insurance companies don't insure properties in Detroit. So if I can't insure it, a lot of lenders are not going to lend on it
At all.
at all because
Full
they
stop.
can't protect their investment,
Yeah.
which makes sense. So now the lender is off the hook and say, we're not redlining, we're not funding the gentrification. Like we can't insure it. So, or you can't afford the property insurance based on your debt to income. So they like, they get kind of a pass, quote unquote. And I also wanted to ask your thoughts on gentrification because I feel like it's like a bad word in our community, like gentrification. Oh my God! And when I hear gentrification, all I hear is that means some properties are about to start appreciating. That means you don't need to sell. You need to figure out, bring a family together, whatever, to make sure those taxes and insurance is paid for.
It's hard, James. It is so hard when your property value was appraised at 40,000, 100,000, and then all of a sudden now it's worth 300, 400,000.
That's
Those
tough,
taxes
man.
are really crazy. Even when they're in escrow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just makes your monthly payment go so high. And so that's why I always say that you kind of have to look at your financial situation. You don't want to be house poor. But if you can afford a house and you're not a business owner, buy one. I think a lot of times we lack confidence. I know I bought a property some years back and I was like planning and planning and planning, and I was
Yeah.
talking to one of my friends and I showed him everything from my credit score to all the stuff that I had going on, and he was like, "Shorty, what are you waiting on? You're ready." And I was
Yeah.
like, "I'm trying to get my credit score right here." He's like, "No, because the rate that they're going to offer you isn't going to matter
Yeah, it's
by
not.
you being bumped up 5 points. 10
Yeah.
points is not going to make a huge difference. There's certain
And then when they
margins
pull
when
your
it
credit,
does make a difference."
your credit gonna go down a few points anyway, just off the pool.
Right.
So even you're trying to get those extra 5 or 10 points,
And it's gonna go down anyway. Yeah. So I think a lot of us just lack confidence. We lack guidance. There are tons and tons of home ownership like programs. Donald Trump being in office right now, I know some of us hate it, some of us love it, but when it comes to the housing situation, he's saying that he wants to incentivize first-time home ownership. There's tons of first-time home ownership programs, Georgia Dream, NACA. There's so
Yes.
many. There's some that are local neighborhood. Some of them are state funded. Some of them are federal programs. But just know that if you want to buy a house, you can literally buy a house and have somebody else pay the down payment for you. On the back end, there's all kind of rules. You have to live there for 5 years. It has to be your primary residence.
Yeah.
Tons of small print that you have to read. But just know that they will give you from anywhere 3% to 5% of your down payment. All you have to do is pay your closing costs. Sometimes the seller will pay that closing cost. Sometimes you can close on a house for a lot less than you actually think. But I
Facts.
think that the first step is, first of all, getting your mental right.
Yeah.
Making a decision, period. Is this something that I want to do? And then if it is something you want to do, going and seeking, guidance, not from scammers. There's so many scammers that will fix your credit. There's so many scammers that will fix paperwork to help you do. Don't do it. You can actually do it legit. Trust me.
I met a lady who actually quote unquote help people get mortgages and do all that. She just went to jail. So
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And then if you don't want to own a home, just know that that's perfectly okay too. But you do need to find other places to put your money so that it can invest and multiply for you. Whether that's your Roth, whether that's a what is it, a HSA,
yeah,
medical
yeah, yeah.
account, whether it's a 401k. Look
That's the
into what
one
your
thing I
company
miss.
matches.
That's the one thing I miss having. As an entrepreneur, Obamacare doesn't allow you to. And this is not a shot at Obama, but Obamacare doesn't allow. This is why a lot of entrepreneurs are kind of mad at that. Obamacare doesn't allow you to have that tax write off from the HSA accounts. You only get that by being on like group benefits from large companies. And even if you're at a smaller company, I don't think the company can afford it. So if you're at like some of these mega large companies, you get that benefit, and you can. I think they just raised it to $3,500. You can write that off, and I mean, you go get your teeth cleaned, you go get just regular checkups. All of that is tax free, and that's a real benefit. So that's one thing I miss being in corporate is those benefits, because the benefits you get as an entrepreneur, based off of what you can afford, and it's just night and day compared to the benefits. But you mentioned Donald Trump. He's in office. I haven't really spoke about the Trump versus Kamala whole thing, and I haven't spoke about it specifically because I have close friends who were like working on the Kamala campaign,
Okay.
and I have friends who were working on the Trump campaign, and I'm kind of that guy in the middle with this media company, and they like, well, which one you going, which way you gonna lean, and I'm like, I ain't leaning no way. Who ain't nobody paying? They ain't buying no advertisements. They not do. They ain't grease my pocket. So I'ma just report the news. But um, it's. I knew for a fact they weren't gonna let Kamala Harris run the country. I knew it. What I thought was gonna happen, and this is kind of crazy, but I thought Joe Biden was gonna die and Kamala was gonna be the president.
Okay.
That's what I thought was gonna happen. And I remember this lady on Oprah or whatever. Somebody was interviewing a lady, and they asked, how are we going to have the first female president? And they said it's going to be a female vice president, and then the president is actually going to die or be like mentally, you know,
Incapacitated.
incapacitated.
Yeah.
And when Biden stepped down, I'm like, this is her chance. Like Kamala really about to be. And I don't think people understand how big that was going to. If Kamala Harris was going to become, like, if she would have became the president, she would be bigger than like Rosa Parks. Like, she'd be bigger than Obama.
Absolutely.
Like, she'd be bigger than Obama. Like, Obama is like a statesman. Everybody, like, when you talk about politics, it's like Obama, whatever.
He had one deficit, which was that he's black. She has two.
She's black, and
And a
she's
woman.
a woman. So I didn't want to say it, but I knew anything barring Joe Biden dying or something like that, there's no way she was going to beat Donald Trump. She would have beat nobody. Like, she wouldn't have won. They didn't even let Hillary win. Hillary beat Trump. I remember waking up. I was in college then. This is to tell my age or whatever. I'm so young, right? I was in college, and Hillary and Trump was going against each other, and I remember going to sleep, and it was like Hillary was like killing Trump, and
Yeah.
I'm just like,
For the general vote.
yes, and I'm just like, oh my God, we about to have a female president. And I woke up, and my roommates was like, I had all white roommates, right? All white men, and they were running through the hallways going crazy, and I'm just like, what are they doing, bro? It's like 3 in the morning. It was like, Donald Trump's the president. I was like, you fucking lie. But Trump's in office now. A lot of people are angry about it. But one narrative that's been going around online is black women saying, like, we sitting this one out. It ain't our fault. We voted for Kamala. So, as a black woman, I don't know how you feel about that narrative of, like, black women are the savior of the Democratic Party or whatever. We're the only ones fighting against white supremacy or the Republican Party. I know that's a big narrative. I don't really know how. I mean, I have my feelings about it, but I want to know, like, how you feel about that.
There are 26 women senators
Okay.
currently serving.
Out of how
In-
many?
In,
You know,
in
how many?
history, there were 64. And so currently, We said there's 26, right?
Yep.
Out of 100.
Okay, 26%.
Right. So when we look at it in terms of electoral votes, right, which
Okay.
if we know anything about politics, we know that electoral votes are heavier than the general
Yeah, the
vote.
general population. I don't even know why they even tally that because it don't matter. They just do it just to make us feel good. But
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
it's cap.
It's more symbolic than anything.
Yes.
And I think even what you're saying about the Constitution constantly referencing the president as a man,
Yeah.
I feel like certain marginalized groups will get wins in terms of symbolism, but not in terms of real change, right?
Yeah.
So if we have 100 senators that are putting out electoral votes, 26 of them are women, right?
Right.
And Kamala needs how many, you know what I mean,
Right.
to win. It's just kind of what I like to call a fixed system.
Yeah, it's fixed against like it's almost mathematically impossible.
There you go.
For her to win.
There you go. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand going into it, which is why you had a lot of women who were like crying and they were really emotional about her loss. And I get it.
Man,
I
my
get
best
it.
friend, when she was hurt.
Yeah, because the narrative is that it could happen. But like you said, if you really understand the math behind it, you would understand that it's not going to happen.
I mean,
anything is possible, but probability is what we should be kind of basing things on.
now honestly, what she could have did, she could have really bullied the president. She could have, when Joe Biden stepped down, instead of trying to run and be the president for the next 4 years, she could have played her cards right and said, Biden is like, he can't run the country.
But she would have been
She
going
could invoke
against.
the 25th Amendment. I think that's the 25th Amendment. Correct me. What's the
It would have been difficult though, James, because
You know what
have
I'm talking
to
about, though,
remember.
right?
Yeah, I do know what you're talking about, but you got to remember, like that's biting the hand that feeds you. He's the
Well-
person that put her in that position to begin with. So imagine if you and I were doing this podcast, right? And it's your podcast. You're like, hey, Shorty, I think you'd be great on my podcast. You should come. And then I come on, and then we do, some episodes together. And then I go put a video out saying, hey, you guys, I've been hanging around with James, and behind the scenes, I think he's losing it. You know what I mean? And I think it's time for me to go ahead and take over this podcast because I don't really think that he's capable. It's like,
Well, okay,
that
with
is
that
just
example,
that would be so crazy, right?
It would be crazy, but that's
Even if it was true, let's say even if it was true, it would still be so disloyal. And you have to understand, too, how people become endorsed to even become a politician in the first place, right?
Yeah.
So I can have everybody in the neighborhood loving me and wanting me to run for office. But if I don't get the endorsement of the
From the-
Democratic Party,
yeah, from the higher ups.
there you go. So the accountability is always going to be to the party first. Then it's going to be to the campaign funders, whoever that is, and it's
Exactly.
not the little guy campaign funders that are
Yeah,
giving
yeah. It's not
$5
the
each.
little $100 win with black
So, yeah.
men, win with black women that they say raised all this money.
Yeah. So
No.
first you have your party, then you have the campaign funders, larger campaign funders, and then you have your constituency.
Right.
So that's another thing is like until we do a campaign overhaul in America as to how we do campaign funding,
Yeah.
if we change campaign funding tomorrow, right, then we could change the outcomes altogether. But as long as the core things that impede on the progress of marginalized people, meaning women,
Yeah.
people of color,
Yeah.
until those core things are removed and completely overhauled, we're never going to get a change.
That's the problem why no president, I don't care, even Barack, like no president is going to do something specifically for the black community because the black community don't finance the president. Like if we pooled our money together and made a super PAC and said this is the black super PAC or urban super, whatever you want to call it, and we have at least, let's say $50 million, that's enough to move the needle. And we said we want this specific law changed, and that's another problem. We got so many problems, we can't even agree upon what law we want. One is police brutality. Another is equity and inclusion in the workplace. Another one is housing and, you know what I'm saying? So it's so many different things. I really feel like Donald Trump was the easiest president to bribe to get something.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like after Trump, it's gonna be over. Because Trump is the type of person that all you got to do is say, oh, man, you're great. You're this, you're that. We're going to somehow funnel some money to you like all these people donated. They donated $200 million to his inauguration. All these big corporations donating $1 million a piece. Where's that money going?
Well, it's going to their interest.
I know, but
It's going to be able to have favor with him. Like, a lot of us in our community don't really truly understand what lobbyists are and what they really do.
Correct.
So you're not trying to get somebody to do something on the back end, right? It's not you being a state representative and me coming to you after the fact and saying,
Yeah.
hey, my community has this issue, we need you to help us with it. What you have to do is you have to identify somebody in the community who is an intelligent person who has aspirations to run for some kind of political office, right?
Right.
And then get on the same page with them and say, hey, how can we help you to run for this office, being that we have already agreed what our grievances, whatever it is that we
Right.
want to gain progress on, and then you put them in. So that's what these corporations are doing. They're getting on the front end, not on the back end.
Right.
They're not waiting until somebody's already in office and then going to see
Yeah,
what
because-
principles they stand
'cause
for
right
and
now,
then seeing if they can get
Trump
the help.
he's the most dangerous he's ever going to be right now because he's not campaigning again. So like last time he was trying to campaign again to run again. He ain't campaigning no more. I'm in here for the next 4 years. I'm set in stone. Now he's campaigning for the Republican Party.
I'm so glad you said that because that's what I wanted to see out of Barack Obama in his second campaign.
Yeah.
I wanted to just see him go ham for black people because now you don't have to worry about running in a third campaign.
Correct.
Because we know that even if every single black person in America got out and voted, it's not going to be enough votes to put someone in office, right? But once
Right.
you know you can't run again,
Yeah,
the
it's over.
same thing that you're saying Donald Trump could potentially do is what I really wanted to see out of Barack Obama because it's like, okay, now you
That
don't have
first
anybody's ass
campaign
to
is
kiss
like-
anymore.
Correct.
This is it. You know what I mean? So you might as well go. And I think that he did do some things, but was wanting him to do more.
Yeah, but again, like going back to what I was saying, the black community don't find like they think things just happen because, like the politicians decided to do it. No, they were bought. They are bought and paid for.
Uh-oh.
Like, and that's just being honest. Politicians are bought and paid for. That's like breaking news, right? like,
You're really saying it.
like each side, and then they say, okay, Trump a billionaire. He got all these billionaire buddies. Elon Musk. Like, let's be honest. Kamala had a bunch of billionaire buddies. Barack got all the billionaire buddies. Everybody got billionaires run the world. They run the country. Money runs everything, right? So the idea that anybody's going to do something for the black community specifically without the black community lobbying and paying these people, it's over. Why do if I don't benefit from helping y'all, why would I do anything when this group over here, like what people don't know, the LGBT community, they funded Obama.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted gay rights. They wanted things like this. They wanted gay marriage. What did Obama get in there and do?
Gave it to him.
Gave it to him. Now, if we wanted some type of police brutality or something, we could have put some money together and we could have got us a few hate.
But do we have it? Do regular, every single day, black folks in the community have excess cash flow to put towards things like
we
that?
got
Because
$50. Everybody can put, if all the black people
how
put
do we get on the same
$50,
page about what we want to put the $50 towards? Who's leading us?
that's my problem. I mean, that's the problem because it's so many other problems that, you a woman, you're going to have, black women are going to have the problems that y'all deal with that I don't know nothing about.
Mm-hmm.
Just like Kamala made her whole campaign about abortion. A lot of black men, like, we don't really have no say-so in abortion anyway. So it ain't like we not feeling that, but we just like, that ain't really our issue. That's an issue for women.
Mm-hmm.
So her doing her whole campaign on that was kind of like, well, you leaving black men out. What are you going to talk about for black men? And then when she came and she said, we're going to, what she say? We're going to legalize or minimize something about weed. I'm like, well, I don't smoke. I ain't never smoked. So what are you going to do for me? And it's just like, we can't never get on the same page. So,
But y'all have always had men candidates who do stuff for you guys.
what do you like? Who has done anything for black men?
Every male politician.
For black men specifically? Or just for
Not-
men and we just byproduct of being a man
Yeah,
and
that.
have that privilege of being a man? Okay,
That.
I can agree with that, but
Yeah.
something specifically for black men, I can't think of one
What
thing.
would you like if you could put something on the table?
I think what Kamala could have said when they asked, what are you going to do for black men? She could have been like, I'm going to put the trades back into high schools and urban areas. That would have took over because for one, if she do that, it puts the ball in the black man court. Now, if the trade is in the school, you got to actually go do the trade. You got to work. I just put it in there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to help a lot of men because a lot of black men have felonies or they can't get these white collar jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're willing to work in the trade, you can become a millionaire. It's like articles out there saying like the new millionaire class is the trades because you own real estate. If you needed your roof done, it costs. Like that's not a cheap
Getting
thing.
my car fixed cost.
Getting your car fixed costs. Everything costs. Like if you gotta build a deck, like my granddad in the house that he had, he got older, so he needed a wheelchair like in a deck,
A ramp.
a ramp. Well, I keep saying deck, whatever. He needed a ramp. That cost like $6,000 or $7,000 or something like that. Like that's not cheap.
Right.
But like that's something that could be geared towards all people, but you can market it as this is specific for black men because I'm gonna put it in the high schools in the areas that black men go to. So that's what I think she could have said, and that's what I would like a presidential candidate to do. Even though I'm not in the trade, I own my own company. I'm not fixing a roof. However, I do respect the trades, and I know how valuable it is, and it also allows you to take control of your own destiny. You can work with your hands. You can do as many roofs as somebody pay you to do.
Absolutely.
There's no the white man is over me trying to. It ain't none of that. No excuse. You can do your own thing. Go get the certification. Go get bonded insurance. Stay in compliance, and build your own neighborhood. Like you ain't even got to do the suburbs. You can literally just do your own hood and
Yeah.
like build wealth that way.
Yeah.
That's something that's thoughtful that can actually be executed, and like we ain't got no money behind that. So now it's a good idea, but who's going to really do it? Who's really thinking about black men when they in the office? Nobody.
I think there's a big disconnect too between the different classes, and politicians try to market themselves as if they're everyday people like me and you.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes
even though they start out that way,
they
but
do. They do. I was shocked. I remember one time I was, I don't want to call it an internship, but I was shadowing a state representative.
Yeah.
And I found out her salary was like 60,000 or something. And then I was shadowing like a city council person, found out their salary cap was like 60,000 as well, driving a very regular car. So I think in the beginning they do start out like you and I, but we know, like you said, so many of them are bought that they end up in this completely different social class,
Yeah.
and then they don't have a cap on their careers. So it's like if you keep getting reelected, you can be in Congress your whole life until
Correct.
you're 99 years old. You
Yeah.
know, so I think that being said, there's a disconnect there. I don't even think that they always know what laws to make or pass or how they can help everyday people, and that's why it's
Yeah.
important for us to be our own advocates, like you said.
I mean, but I just think at the end of the day, once you become a congressman, you work for the billionaires and you work for the people that run the city. Like I'm from Detroit. Dan Gilbert basically runs Detroit. Like he's building up downtown Detroit, and a lot of people are quote unquote mad because he's buying up a lot of buildings and he invest. But I'm like, okay, so where the jobs gonna come from? It ain't gonna come from you because you ain't got no money. Even though you got all the ideas, you don't have no money. This guy got $1 billion. He's trying to buy up downtown Detroit. Downtown Detroit is empty. Why would we just let the building sit empty?
That's how Donald Trump got rich. I don't know if you know this or not, but Donald Trump's first major investment, I'm trying to remember what the name of the hotel is. I could be wrong. Don't quote me. I think it was called like the Whitney Hotel in Midtown Manhattan. It was like, it used to be it wasn't a hotel.
Wasn't it like a mall or something like that? You talking about that investment? It was like a mall, and he converted it into a hotel. Or
Yeah,
something
but
like
it wasn't in operation anymore. It was just an eyesore for the city.
Yeah.
And his first project was doing like a multi-$100 million overhaul on that. And he turned it into this beautiful hotel. And he worked with the city politicians. They gave him a tax abatement. So they basically told him that if he overhauled the building, made it look nice, it would bring business back to Midtown Manhattan.
Yes.
So they gave him a tax abatement for some 20 years or something. He didn't have to pay property taxes, which is
Crazy,
crazy. Because
crazy.
we just sat there and talked about how home ownership can be difficult because as a homeowner, your taxes are going up every year, right? So we're the
Every
little
single
guy
year.
and we have to worry about that. But then somebody
Right.
like Donald Trump, the city government would tell him like, yeah, we're not going to charge you property tax for the next 20 years. So that was his very first investment that went really big. And so what happened was that when he did that, other people followed suit. And so when the other people followed suit, he came in, and when he did his next building, he told
Right.
the city politicians, I want a tax abatement for this too. By that time, they were like, nah, the city's already coming back.
Yeah,
we don't
right,
really
right.
want to do that. This man went into City Hall with some gangsters and roughed up the city council
No,
members. Do you
I
hear me?
didn't. No, I didn't know
Oh,
that.
he literally roughed one of them up, one of his detail security who was an ex-mobster. Literally, they went and roughed up this
This
man.
is breaking news. I didn't.
Yes, they threatened him, they scared him, and he ended up getting another tax abatement. And then after that, they started really dealing with him accordingly, so he couldn't bully them anymore.
Wow.
But that's how he first came up.
Well,
You
I
know?
knew he came up in real estate, but I didn't know like the
That was
specifics.
his.
I did know about that story you're saying. I knew about kind of like some details of him going in and revamping like a eyesore. I didn't know it was in Manhattan, so that makes
Yeah,
sense.
and at that time, that's when crime was super high in New York.
Yeah.
Drugs were really bad in New York, and so it just was bad business for the city. And he was working hand in hand with the city, and so that's what these corporations do. Is the way that the government looks at it is like, hey, if you're going to create this many jobs, that's how Jeff Bezos, that's how Amazon, all them,
Yeah.
they don't pay taxes because what they do is they say we're going to come in, we're going to build this facility, it's going to increase the value of the area where we build it, and then we're going
Right.
to employ some 20,000 people in your city. So because
Right.
of the trade-off of that, they're creating jobs and they're doing this, they're like, don't charge us taxes.
Right.
And so
Well, I think
there
I
should be
personally
some,
think
there
that's
should be
fair.
some, is it though? And for how long?
I think it's
Especially
fair.
when the jobs that you're giving to these people are not at a livable wage. So you're telling me that I can
Okay.
employ somebody at the federal minimum wage, $7.25 an hour, and because I'm going to employ this many people, now I don't have to pay taxes on my $1 billion a year that I'm making every
Okay,
year?
let me ask you this question. Okay, minimum wage, right? Well, in terms of Amazon, they don't pay minimum wage.
No,
they pay
they-
way above. So
but-
let's stick to Amazon.
But so much lobbying and media attention had to be brought for them too. Amazon didn't just start out paying $15 an hour. That's something they did in the last few years because they became under fire for
Okay.
not.
All right, so like for example, Amazon, they pay. Let's say they pay $20 an hour. I don't know what they pay, but let's say Amazon pays $20 an hour. Here's the problem with the minimum wage or any type of payment with the employee and employer relationship. No matter how much I pay you, it's never going to be enough. In the case of Amazon, the reason it's never going to be enough because they pay you $20, but they gonna work you and get $100 out of you. Is that fair? So now you're like, well, I want $100. Okay, the people we work for, we pay $100 for, we gonna work and get 1,000 out of them. That's how business work. So it was a guy on CNN. I want to pull it up, but we can't play the clip or whatever because of copyright. But the guy was on CNN complaining about being at Amazon, and Amazon, he wanted them to union, and he was telling them how he's so overworked and all of this. And mid interview, they didn't ask this dude this before the interview. I don't know why, but he's on there complaining. I'm thinking this guy make like $30,000 a year and getting like worked. He said he make $120,000 a year. He was the manager, but he just felt like he was overworked and underpaid because Jeff Bezos got a yacht and he making billions of dollars, and the company is making $10 billion in profit. So my point is, I actually think that's a good wage. If you get,
Of course you do.
If you're an unskilled worker,
You're an employer.
no. If you're an unskilled worker, you have no education, you're sitting in the neighborhood, you're not doing anything. Going to work for Jeff Bezos for $20 an hour is a good wage. In a warehouse,
I disagree, respectfully.
how much should they pay him?
I think that it really should be based on what the business is pulling in. I absolutely do not think that it's okay for shareholders and CEOs of companies to be raking in billions and billions and billions
Well,
of
hold on.
dollars
They got
while
like,
people can't barely afford to pay their rent. That is like not okay to me.
well, the barely
Because it's the value that they're bringing. Like you said, they're still bringing value. You have to know that with most companies, the heartbeat of the company is literally at the low level workers.
Well,
Without them, you have nothing.
The problem with the Amazon workers is the value is not in the people. It's not in the one person. Like it's
It's
not,
in the collective.
it's in the collective.
Uh-huh.
So
And they know that. That's why they want to unionize.
right, but they can't really unionize because if this one place try to unionize, they got enough profit. They just shut down the whole warehouse.
Not necessarily. I think
Yeah, they do that. They do that. They just did that for Jeff Bezos and them. Just did that. They tried to unionize, and they literally shut down the whole warehouse because they like it's cheaper for us to just lose money on this warehouse than it is to if we let y'all unionize, then
But what
everybody's
if
gonna
all
start.
the other
unionizing.
warehouses follow suit? Is that applying pressure?
That would be applying pressure. But what did you just say? These people can barely pay their rent. So now, how long can you really apply pressure if you make it $20 an hour? If you accept $20 an hour, that let me know something about you.
And yeah.
You can't afford to apply too much pressure.
And that's not even just with the $20 an hour. That's why a whole bunch of NFLers didn't want to follow Kaepernick when he was doing what he was doing. And those guys make millions. But what they know is that when you make $5 million and your
They're not
mortgage
bigger
is
than the system.
$8,000 every month,
But
you still don't want to be behind on your bills.
even with Kaepernick, I feel like where Kaepernick went wrong is
But I'm
he
just
ain't
saying
had-
on the financial end, those guys who make millions weren't even going to take that L and say, hey, I'll sacrifice. You know, I make millions. I've got tons in the bank.
Yeah.
If I sit out a couple games, you know, I'll be okay. No, they didn't look at it like that. Because
Well-
sometimes even when people are making millions, they're still living check to check. And you
of
know
course,
that.
of course, yeah.
Because
of
it's
course.
all about what's your overhead, what's your expenses.
Yeah, I mean, whether I got an $80,000 house or $8 million house, I can still be living check to check because my mortgage is $200,000 versus, 500 or whatever. But
Because it's a purposeful thing that they do. You have consultants and strategists and people who are coming in to look at what the bottom line is and where can we cut costs and how can we crunch this. And very rarely is it crunched from the very top. It's cut out
So-
from the bottom, and I just think that's terrible.
so I personally think, okay, minimum wage $7.25. That's crazy because it was $7.25 like 15 or 20 years ago.
In 2009, it hasn't been raised since
It
2009.
hasn't been raised. That's on a federal level. Okay, that's we
Federal
both
level, yep.
we both agree that's crazy. However, I think a big problem with the minimum wage conversation is the unskilled labor that comes in and take over those jobs.
What's
so
wrong
like,
with that,
So like
though?
for example, if you're working at Burger King, like or Chick-fil-A, you go in Chick-fil-A, it's a high schooler in there and they very enthusiastic about working there. This is their first job. They might be like Chick-fil-A don't pay minimum wage, but I'm just saying if they were. And they're very enthusiastic and they're 15 or 16 years old and it's like if that person's making $7 an hour, like okay. The problem is that person that's making $7 an hour at the restaurant is no longer 15 or 16. That person's 32 trying to take care of 2 kids and a family.
And sometimes they're beyond retirement age because they
Well,
can't
yeah.
afford to retire. How many times have you gone through a drive-through and it's a person with completely gray hair taking your order?
Right. So I'm saying the
Long
problem.
gone are the days of like everybody at McDonald's is 16 years old.
I'm saying the problem is a skills gap.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere between that person being 16 and this person being 32, there's
didn't gain
no
skills.
they didn't gain skills, and that might not be all their fault. I'm not blaming the person because, like I said, Kamala. One of the things I would have loved her to say when talking about black men is putting skills back into education. So
They're not going to do that,
they're
though.
that's the problem.
Because higher education is big business, James.
Yes.
Why would we
I
push
got student
trade
loans.
schools when universities are charging 10, 20, 30,
I
40,
got student loans.
$50,000 to 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-olds? And if you don't have the $50,000, $60,000 to attend our university,
Guess what? You can
we'll
borrow
give you
it.
a loan. So why, when higher education is such big business, would we ever promote low-cost technical colleges or even free programs? There's tons of free programs out here that can teach people skilled trades. Please get online. Please go to Google. Whatever it is that you think you want to do, there might be I work for a nonprofit organization that trains people for jobs that can make them 40, 50, 60,000, 70,000 and above. So you really have to kind of take ownership, because if you're waiting for some higher up entity
Right, but
to organize in this way, that's not how America as a country is structured.
Right. And so, okay, so my problem, I mean, my question to you is, who's at fault? Is it the politicians for not having skilled labor being prioritized in the education system? Is it the unskilled 32-year-old that's working the minimum wage job? Or is it the corporations for, even though it's $7 an hour, you can have dignity and pay this person $20 an hour? Who's at fault? Because on one hand, you can say, all right, if you're 17, you can take control of your life and actually learn skills. So by the time you're 30, you're demanding a higher wage just based off of supply and demand, and you actually add value to the economy. On the other hand, it's like, what did you do over the last 15 years to where you're 32, and the job you were 17 doing, you're only qualified to do that at that minimum wage.
They dropped out of school, they had a baby, they made a mistake and have something on their record.
So is that the politician's fault or the corporation fault, or is it their fault?
I think it's a collective, and I think that the solution is multi-pronged too. I don't think it's one particular solution. I think the biggest one is just self-accountability. Like I said, I work for a nonprofit organization, and we train people for jobs to make lots of money. And a majority of the people who come in are foreigners. They're people who English isn't even their first language, but they heard about the opportunity from someone else, and they're here to take advantage of the opportunity. So I think individual accountability, individual ambition, looking at your life in the long term, understanding that we don't have throwaway years. People look at the
Right.
age between 18 and 30 as throwaway years. You'll have a
Oh, of
22-year-old
course.
acting
Yeah,
immature.
yeah, yeah.
They're 22. They're so young.
It's like, no.
We don't have any throwaway years. The decisions that you make now impact, your future. So I think too, we have this problem of wanting to look cool. Guys care about women. Like, I don't care about the Red Pill podcast. Men care about women.
Of course.
And if
We
they
do
think-
everything.
Yeah, if they think a woman don't want to date me because I'm a trash collector, right? It affects their ego. When
Of
in
course.
reality, you might make $70,000 as a trash collector.
Of course.
So the narrative of what's pushed in our community is different too. Like, when people talk about Donald Trump and making America great again, what they're talking about is in the 1960s when somebody could go to a factory job and make $70,000 an hour.
Yeah.
In the 90s,
I'm from Detroit, so
My cousin-
all my
worked at Ford.
Yes.
She did HR for Ford in Detroit, right? And she literally oversaw like the manufacturing plant.
yes.
And she was telling me how like laborers who were working on an assembly line were making a good honest $70,000, $80,000. They had a great pension. They had all these things.
Oh,
So when you're,
of course.
when you are a laborer, you know what I mean, or a factory worker, and you're making enough to take care of your family, I think that there's still some dignity in that, right? So I think like guys care about how they're perceived, and women too set a big standard. Like, we want a man who's already super rich, and even that plays into it. Like, I think
Right.
that there's so much that plays into it.
Most people would rather make $100,000 as a lawyer than $200,000 as a plumber.
Yeah, because
All day.
again, it's the look.
Prestige, the look. It's I got a Benz. I'm pulling up into a corporate office. Versus I'm coming in to fix your toilet. You paying me $300-$400 an hour, and I do 4 of those a day, and I walk away and I net 200,000. But I'm a plumber, so I don't get invited to red carpet events. I don't get put on the billboards. I don't get a pat on the back. But I make $200,000 a year, and I'm probably not in debt. So most of that money's coming to me, and I actually have a skill. So even when I buy a house, I don't have to pay a plumber. I can do it myself. So I'm saving money. Like, it's so many. And my granddad was a plumber who gave me the property or whatever on when he passed. So I have the utmost respect for the trades, and I wish more of us went into it. However, I'm gonna just be honest. Like, I know the path. I came from the bottom. Like, I came from the bottom. Everything I got, I built up from the bottom. I know how to teach somebody how to come from the bottom, educate yourself, go to school, build a good career, start a business. I can educate 1 or 2 people like that. The problem when it comes to educating the masses, we always think about the black community, and this has to help the whole community
At once, right?
Yeah, I know how to help individuals. I can't help the community.
But that is how you help the community, by helping individuals.
I know, but don't nobody want to hear that.
Yeah.
Because that means if you just help 5 people in your community, and I help 5 people in my community, and you help mentor 5 people in your community, now we're really helping the whole community. But don't nobody want to hear that. People want to hear one rule that's going to help everybody and is going to create generational wealth for the whole black community. It's not going to. Like, it literally don't exist. So,
A lot of times people don't want to help you. And that goes back to what I was saying about scamming, right? It's like, oh, you can buy my course for $99.99 to
Yeah.
learn this, right?
Right.
And then people will tell you, oh, people who are really good at what they do don't just teach people what they're doing for $99.99. But
Yeah.
my thing is, why are we not teaching people what we're good at for free $99?
Because if something free, then people are not going to really pay attention to it. They're not going to, like, a lot of times we add we attach value to something based on how much it costs, which is why we think a Louis Vuitton bag, and here I am with a Louis Vuitton bag, right? Why you think that is better than, some other bag of the same quality, but it don't have the Louis Vuitton, or they're not charging that much. So people, a lot of times they associate value with price. And if you do something for free for the community, nobody shows up. So now you're demotivated. You done took your time out of your day. You could be with your husband or your wife, but you're here trying to mentor kids. And all the kids at the Lil Durk concert, and they didn't spend 300. So it's like, oh, you got 300 for that, but you don't have 300 for the course. So now it's like, well, I'm gonna charge 300 for the course. And then when you charge 300 for the course, now everybody's saying, oh, you're not for the community. You ain't helping people out. So it's kind
Yeah,
of like,
I think it's a catch-22 in some ways, but at the same time, there are some people who do need your help. And again, I'll go back to like what I said. I work for a nonprofit, and we help people, and we help people for free, right? And so
Right.
because of that, I do have some people who don't take it seriously. But I can identify those people right away, and I just eliminate them because I understand as someone who's trying to help people, I have to free up seats to help people, right?
Right.
So I'm not about to give it to somebody who's not serious. So I feel like for every one person who isn't serious, there's really three people who are, and they want that help, and they need it. So if there is somebody that you can identify as a mentor, each one teach one type of mentality, I think that helps. I think what you're doing is great. I think this today, what we're doing, what we're trying to do moving forward is great. I think that people are tired and they're weary. Sometimes people who do want to learn more will pay somebody to learn, and then
Right.
they don't learn anything and they feel scammed, then they get
Facts.
discouraged and go back. So I think that there's a lot of that. I think that people who are trustworthy, credible, want to help, I think that they need to kind of team up and
What do you think about DEI in general, and what do you think about like the attack on DEI now that Trump's in office? Like all these companies, literally overnight, they were in 2020. Oh, we're donating 200 million. We're gonna do this. We're gonna commit. And here's the good word: we're gonna commit. Right? You ain't committing nothing because like there's no legal ramifications if you commit 200 million to something and you really don't give it. So like a lot of these companies said we're going to commit this, we're going to donate this, or they maybe did donate to Black Lives Matter or whatever they donated to, and now they're having a full reversal. They're getting rid of all the DEI programs. Trump just said all DEI federal workers are getting fired. He got rid of um, the act that I forgot the president, man. One of them presidents, I think Lyndon Johnson, he put in like an act that you have to consider for like federal contracts and things like that. Trump just got rid of that he said that's DEI. So like, what do you like? I ain't worked in corporate in 5-6 years, so like I really didn't benefit from DEI at all. Like, and I got a lot of friends who are black men. They didn't really benefit from it either. But I know a lot of black women. I got a lot of friends who are black women, and they are like distraught because you double minority, right? A woman and you're black. So those programs were initially designed for black people, and then they started putting people of color, and then they expanded out to
women.
women. So now it's like white women are benefiting from this
The
and
most.
the most, and then they expanded out to the LGBTQ community. So now some white men are in there.
So there's
And
a larger umbrella, yeah.
larger umbrella. And then this is where I think everything went wrong because now DEI stands for everybody
Diversity.
except black men, everybody except white straight men.
Yep.
So at that point, white straight men are the one who run the country. They like,
Okay.
no, it's a wrap.
Okay. So what people don't know about the DEIB situation is that a lot of companies had financial incentive to be a part of the DEI movement
Right.
from the beginning. And so what
Financial
happened?
incentive from who?
The government.
Okay.
So the government was agreeing to pay certain entities to participate in DEI. And they didn't. They didn't hold true to their part of sending out the payments. And so when they didn't, send out the money, when they didn't fulfill their part of, if you do this, we'll do this.
Right.
The government, they just didn't. And so a lot of these companies were fed up with it to begin with. So when Donald Trump came in and said, hey, by the way, if you don't want to do this anymore, don't do it anymore. They went and looked at their situation and they were like, hey, the government is not following through on their end of it.
We're not benefiting from this.
We're not benefiting from it. And a lot of them didn't want to do it to begin with, because
Of course.
if it's something that they wanted to do to begin with, then why did they have to be financially incentivized?
It would have already been there.
Right. So there's a part that the government is playing as well too, that nobody's highlighting, nobody's talking about. So I don't know if they would have played their part, then maybe these companies wouldn't be opting out so quickly.
Right.
Maybe they still would. Who knows? But in my mind, I feel like that's a big part of it, and it's a part that's not being highlighted in the media narrative. And I don't think that it's okay, because initially the reason why we have DEI to begin with is because of the history of racism
Correct.
and inequity in this country to begin with. So if we didn't have that, then we wouldn't even have to put DEI. That wouldn't even be a thing. So, but I think that that's the part that the general public doesn't know about.
Well, for one,
So we're just villainizing, oh, Walmart got rid of DI. Oh, well, we're protesting Walmart. We're not going there anymore. So you kind of got to know what the background is. It may or may not make a difference to you, but I think it's just like something to know.
well, one thing too, and like you mentioned that white women were the benefactor, the ones that benefited the most from DEI. I think the biggest problem with DEI, and the problem that I had, let me talk about personally why I had a problem with where the DEI movement went. Okay, I have a big platform. I have the people's attention. I have a conference. I have all of these other things going on. I have real value outside of DEI. So if you wanted to be like, oh, we're diverse, we help companies, whatever, you come sponsor my events, you do this, but you actually get a real return because I have real people, quality people. The brand is Black Millionaires, so a lot of people who not really into finance and not into bettering themselves, they're not even attractive to the type of content that I do. So I have a very good quality group of people that just so happen to be Black. I didn't get no funding. I didn't get anything. When I did my conference, it came out of my pocket. Everything that I have never received a DEI dollar ever. But let me tell you, every time I throw an event, every time I do something, it's jam-packed. I've been to events that have all these corporate sponsors from the DEI, this and that initiatives, and they just knew the right people. You go there, crickets. Nobody is there. These events, so I knew DEI was going to come to an end because all these events that have all the sponsors, when you go there, nobody's there. So I'm like, how are these companies, Allstate, Nationwide, all these companies, how are they getting a return other than just putting on their website that they support DEI movements? So the minute DEI becomes like a liability and nobody wants to support that no more, you're going to go. Like, you're going to get X'd out. But, for example, companies still have a reason why they can come to me and advertise and sponsor because I really have an audience. But people like myself who really have influence in the audience, we were not getting those DEI dollars. It was those people who just knew the HR person from Facebook. Mm-hmm. Did you see the HR person from Facebook? She went to jail for stealing all the DEI money. She was getting $500,000 a year, and she had like a $15 million budget, and she still was stealing. She was hiring her friends, and they were not even doing the services. If she had an event, she would hire her friends to do videography work for $10,000 to cover a DEI event, and they never even showed up. So this is what I'm saying. Like, so from a corporate perspective, I can understand why they got rid of DEI. They're not getting no real value other than saying I'm helping out this marginalized community versus saying, oh, I'm sponsoring this Black-owned event, but I also get 50,000 emails because this person actually has an audience.
That's
They
sad.
wasn't doing that.
That's sad. It's sad that we don't want to do it just for the moral value. Everything has to have some kind of fiscal value. It's crazy.
I mean, from a corporate
No, I get
perspective,
it. I get it. Corporate,
they have
they're
the
for
duty
profit.
for their shareholders.
Yeah,
So
they're for profit. I get it.
but nonprofit, that's a whole different situation. That's a whole nother topic, and you probably more well versed on that than me. But the nonprofit sector, I mean, the same thing, right? But again, I knew DEI was going to go away, and I never structured my company to benefit.
But DI is more than just like funding. You know, it has to do with hiring practices and setting quotas on how many people of color you have to consider for applications
Yeah,
and
okay,
hiring and
that's
all
a
that.
whole nother perspective, and we
And,
could talk about that.
and I think that matters.
Because I'm not in the I'm not in corporate. I'm not in the corporate world, and I never
But so many people, we have way more people
way more
looking
people
for a
who
job than
yes.
we have,
But I
people
have never
starting
got a
businesses.
job solely because I'm black. Every job I ever got was like I deserved that job,
But
and
here's
I
the
was
thing.
qualified for that
But
job.
DEI is not about we're going to give the black person the job even though they're slightly less
Well,
qualified
that's
because
what
they're black.
companies are marketing it as. I'm not.
Right, but
I agree with you.
But that's incorrect. And
I
so
agree with you.
we
But
have
that's
to,
how DEI is marketed now.
But we have to fight. Well, first of all, DEI as a word, as an acronym, is now a derogatory term.
Correct, and they
The
made it
same
that way
that we make
intentionally.
minority a derogatory term, right?
I agree.
So we live in America. We're black. Black people make up 12% of the U.S. population. That makes us a minority, right?
Right, and
But this is what white
I
people will do.
disagree with that. I think we actually are more, but I don't think the
Even if we're
census-
14%, it doesn't matter. If
Right.
we're not 51%, we're the minority, right?
Right.
So the thing is, what happens is that this is what white people will do. And this is no diss to white people, but this is how the terminology will be used. You and I are considered to be minorities in America because
Right.
we're the minority population. But
Right.
white people will do this. They'll go over to Africa and see a whole bunch of black people, and they'll be like, oh, look at all the minorities. No.
Right.
They're not minorities. You are now the minority.
Correct.
But they're not using the word for its actual meaning within the correct context.
They're using it.
They've
You're
turned
black,
it
so you are a
minority. That's a derogatory term. So
Yes.
that's a marketing campaign. That's the
Yes.
same thing what they're doing with DEI. But what DEI really is saying that if you're a black person and you graduated from the University of Michigan with a 4.0, and I'm a white person and I graduated from the University of Michigan with a 4.0, right?
Right.
That because this company has a requirement to hire at least 50 black people in their company,
Right.
they're not saying you have to hire 50 underqualified black people. What they're saying is that we want to see at least 50 people. You decide whether or not they're qualified, right?
Right.
But we want you to put the effort out to go find 50 qualified black people because we know that they're out there. Because what
Right.
happens is that you can be just as qualified as I am, but because your name on your application is Jamal Jackson and my name on my application is
Sarah Henson or
right,
whatever. Yeah.
right. What happens is that we know that there has been practices where people applications get thrown out right away just because they have an ethnic name.
Correct.
So that's what DEI was. But as the oppressors do, they have changed the narrative, rebranded it, remarketed it, and couched it in a certain way. And so what I'm saying is based on what it's really supposed to do, I don't think that it's something that we should get rid of. And I feel like you being an entrepreneur, you have this really cool, amazing, unique mindset where you're not looking for anybody to give you anything, right? But there's so
Right.
many people who are. And for me personally, until my community at large is doing well, me doing well as an individual just doesn't make me sleep well at night. Like I want to see my community as a collective doing better.
Okay. See, and I feel like that's a part of the quote unquote black tax, and that's a real problem because you, no matter what, can control your destiny. You can't control what the other black women in Louisiana or Dallas or Atlanta or whatever, you can't control what they do, but you're allowing their progress to affect your mental state. Because if they're not doing good and they're on food stamps and they're all, but you working hard, you driving a nice car, you living in a great house, you got a great life, you're traveling, you're doing whatever, you got financial freedom, your life is affected by their lack of execution, no matter if it's their fault or not. So I feel like that's a huge problem, and it's just a part of, again, it's a part of the black tax. It's like this is something that only black people really go through.
But it's not though, because when people get treated really well in a country, it's because it's a more homogenous society. If you go to the Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, these are some of the top countries to live in on the planet, right?
Right.
They have amazing benefits. They live good. Everybody's middle class or higher. The reason is because it's a homogeneous society. Everybody there is white, right? So they don't have to worry about people of color benefiting from this program or that program. Social programs and worrying about the collective and making sure that everyone was good was something that Americans did all the way until the 1960s. That's why they want to make America great again. So when you go to homogeneous societies like Japan, everybody's doing well because everybody's of the same ethnic group. When you have a country like America where you have all these different diverse ethnic groups, but only one ethnic group has been in charge for 400 years, they're stepping on the necks of other ethnic groups. And that doesn't just happen in America, it happens in Africa too. You have countries in Africa where you've got 9 ethnic groups in the country, right? But only one ethnic group has been in charge the
Right.
entire time. So what are they doing? They're stepping on the necks of the other one. And that's beyond race, right?
Right.
That's 2 black African tribes, but only one gets the whole government is just these people.
Right, right,
And so
right.
they treat everybody else like second class citizens. So when you have homogenous societies where everybody is the same thing, they do actually care and they are actually concerned that everybody is living good. And so why can't we be like that? Why is that like why does that have to be survivor's remorse or a tax or a deficit or something that's
Well,
looked
because
at as
it
a
is
negative?
because like as a person who's made it out of the one of the worst, if not the worst neighborhood in America, the east side of Detroit, went to the worst schools. Like a lot of my friends, like one of my friends, he went to a private school. He had a great education, whatever. We always laugh about it. And like I don't have friends that I can call that could help me with my business or whatever. They all locked up. They all like these are people that I'm saying like that I grew up with. Like my network of people that I grew up with, they either locked up or they're just sitting around the neighborhood. They don't have skills. So even though we're friends, I don't have nothing in common with them other than that I knew you from 25 years ago. That's the only thing I have in common with you. And like I guess what I'm getting at is I had to outgrow allowing their their decisions to impact me mentally because I always wanted to be quote unquote humble and like I got a nice car or I got a nice watch or I got this, but damn, if I post this on Instagram, like how my cousins gonna think that struggling trying to eat noodles, like how they gonna feel? And I always like felt that weight, and like over the last year or so, like I've been lifting that weight off my shoulders, and I'm just like, I'm going to make sure I'm okay. My family, my immediate family, the people that I love is okay. I'm not allowing my friend who, you know, decided to rob the store at the corner store and now he did 6 years and he got out and he have no skills, he can't do anything, he walking around the neighborhood strung out. I'm not allowing him to mess with my mental and make me feel guilty about having a nice car or a nice watch or a nice, like, I'm not doing that no more. And I feel like there's so many people in corporate, there's so many people running businesses that are successful, that are smart, and they don't feel good about their life because of what somebody else did or did not do. And that's what I mean by like it's just mentally taxing. And that's like the black tax. Like that's the problem, is because everything I do good is attributed to me, but everything bad that happens in the community is contributed to the whole. It's a reflection of the whole community.
Yeah.
Somebody, you go to the gas station, it's 10 people outside, 10 black men outside. Now you like, "Man, I can't trust black men. I'm scared of them." Now you scared of black men. You know, this is how a lot of racists look at it. And it's like, unfortunately, if I don't put on a suit or if I don't dress a certain way or if I'm not articulate, a lot of people look at me the exact same way they would look at the guy at the gas station if we're next to each other. And we're complete opposite. I have
Yeah.
more in common with everybody I went to college with versus the guy that's at the gas station. But if we're not dressed apart, or if I'm not dressed apart, I get put on the same pedestal as that person.
But
And
even dressing the part doesn't help. They were hanging us from trees with ties hanging and slacks. You know what I
but
mean?
that,
So that's more their problem
it
than it ours.
helps.
But I understand what you're saying. Like, but for me personally, I'm not losing sleep over the people who aren't ambitious and don't want to do anything. For me, I'm more trying to help the people who have a lack of resources, who don't have a mentor, who have the brains, who have the ambition to do something, and
I
they
like
just
that.
need some guidance.
I like
So for
that.
me, I'm here to help them. I'm not here to convince anybody who doesn't want to do something positive that they should do something positive. I think that's an upward battle. But I think that there's enough people out here who want to be mentored, who do have the motivation, and they lack the resources. So those are for me who I try to like target, help, lead by example, whatever
But
resources.
aren't you leaving your community behind? What about the people who? But I'm just
No,
playing the
'cause
devil's advocate
you can
because
leave
this
a
is
horse to
why.
water, but you can't make them drink. So if I have somebody over here who wants help, right, and I have somebody over here who doesn't want to help, I'm not going to spend an hour convincing you that you should get help. I'm going to go ahead and help this person. And I think that if enough people who want the help get help, then what will happen is that their narrative will change, and then people will become covetous over the right things. If we start
Right.
attributing our success to hard work, what happens too in our community is that we want to go from ashy to classy. So we don't want to tell anybody about the struggle, right? Last year I was broke. This year I'm balling. What was the change? Oh,
Yeah.
don't worry about what the change was. Just know that I'm balling. So
Right.
it's like people don't want to say, hey, you know what? I make $250,000 a year and I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm actually a software engineer. I actually went to school for 4 years, and then I went to this boot camp and I got this certification. I self-studied every night for a year and a half, and now I'm a software engineer. I make 250,000, and I'm attributing it to hard work and education. We don't even attribute. Every time we see somebody with a lot of money, they doing something that seems like it's lavish or fun, or not attributing it to hard work, like you said.
Yeah, and I don't think it helps the black community or it helps anybody when you put the entire community based off of what this one person does or this one person's success. Or people say, well, what is Jay-Z donating to to the black community? What has he done for the black community? And it's like, well, why does he have to do anything for the black community?
Why
He's
doesn't
done
he?
things for the people in his reference group, and he's made a lot of people money.
But black people made him rich. Why shouldn't he do something for us? He doesn't have to, but why should he not want to?
But my point is, what is doing something for the community? Because he got a scholarship fund.
He does. Jay-Z does a lot. Jay-Z and
I know, I'm just using him as an example
Jay-Z
because
and
he's
his wife
like,
quietly do actually a lot.
but it's never enough.
You think so?
I think so. Beyonce donated $2 million to the LA fire. They say you a billionaire. Why you ain't donate more?
Yeah, but that's because the average person doesn't even understand money and how money works.
Or you donate. They say you only doing that for a tax write-off.
And that might be true.
But so I can't win. So I'm gonna just take my money. And
You're rich, you know.
I'm gonna just take my money. I'm gonna just take my money and just go buy a yacht. I'm not donating to nothing then, because I don't even get the pat on the back when I donate $1 million.
I feel you, James.
Like, why would somebody even do that? So I just feel like it hurts our community when we try to think as a collective, because nothing you do is ever good enough. For example, let me give you an example. I love Dr. Umar. I fuck with him. He always go viral.
Yeah.
But I have a problem with one thing he said. So basically, you know who Robert Smith is, right?
Of course.
Billionaire, whatever. He donated all that money to the graduating class of Morehouse.
Morehouse, yeah. Uh-huh.
And then he turned around and donated and paid off all the student loans for the parents. And so if the parents had student loans, he paid that off. If the students had student loans, he paid that off. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how much that is, but let's just call that $10 million.
Probably way more, but
Probably way
let's
more.
call it that, yeah.
Let's call it $25 million,
Okay.
whatever. Dr. Umar got on TV, not TV, he got on a podcast and said, because he's married to a white woman, nothing he did he's not doing nothing for the black community. I'm like, he's done more for the black community than anybody I can even think about just doing that. But yes, if he died tomorrow, his billions go to his wife. Who cares? Look what he did for the black community. He just paid $40 million. I think it was $40 million. I think it was actually $40 million. He just paid $40 million in student loans. That's generational wealth for those kids. Mm-hmm. He set them up for generational wealth, graduating with a degree from Morehouse, which is a great school. They're going to get good jobs. And you pay your parents stuff off. But because he married a white woman, he done nothing for the black community.
I wouldn't call it nothing, but I understand. See, Dr. Umar is a special person. He looks at currency in different ways. He doesn't just look at currency in terms of money. He looks at currency in terms of representation. And also, so the way that I look at it, I'm so glad you said that, because I actually look at it. I actually agree with Dr. Umar. And I'm not saying Robert Smith has done nothing for black people. Obviously,
Right.
He's done a lot. But I feel like as a black person, especially as a black man, and even as a black woman too, like the most powerful thing that you can do is marry somebody of the same race as you. And this is the analogy that I always use is this one. If I'm a politician, right, and I'm telling people, you should send your kids to public school because our public schools are wonderful. Okay. They provide an amazing education, right? Let's not give up on our public schools. That's where we need to be sending our kids. But then behind the scenes, I'm sending my kid to a private school.
I don't think nothing's wrong with that.
See, and I think that that's super hypocritical because if the public schools are so good, right, that I'm telling you that that's where you should send your kids, then why am I not sending my
Well,
kids there, right? And
well,
so that makes me look at like if you're sending your kids to private school and you're saying, yeah, kids send your no, then how credible are
I think
you?
you can be a hypocrite and be right.
If I tell you to drink water, but I never drink water, is it genuine what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think you can. I think two things can be true at the same time.
Okay.
So I think I can stand up and tell somebody and say, hey, send your kids to we got great public schools and be telling the truth. But my kids go to a private school. Why? Because I'm worth $50 million and I can afford to send my kids to the private school. I don't have to send my kids to public
So then
school.
the private schools are actually better, right?
Not necessarily. It's
Well,
just they
you
might.
just said you can afford to send them there.
It might be one or two things about the private school because let's say it's safety.
Private
Public
schools,
public schools
are
getting shot up right now.
private
So
schools are better.
I mean, that's debatable.
And
It's some public schools that are really good that
Never.
might trump a private school.
Never.
I went to public schools. I went to the worst public schools, so I had no dog in this fight.
Yeah,
I'm just saying
that's never.
I'm saying two
the
things
case.
can be true at the same time. Just like I can confidently say, guys, go buy a starter home. I can confidently say that, and here I am sitting in my penthouse downtown Atlanta.
But you own
and
a property though. So if you didn't own any property, right, but your platform was all about, ownership, it's like at its core what you're saying might be right? Go buy a property, but it's like how do I know and you haven't really
I
even
don't
done it?
just encourage.
How can you endorse something that you're not actually doing?
I don't. I think you can encourage and endorse something that you're not actually doing. I think you can do
I
that.
think that's deception. I think that when the black women go to the store and they buy a perm to put in their hair to relax their hair, and the picture of the girl on the front is presented as if she has a perm and she does not. And then I go home and I put the perm in my hair and I'm getting cancer now because I'm thinking that I'm
that's
trying to look at
deception.
the girl on the box and she doesn't even use this product,
That's deception, but I do believe
in the form of marketing. It's deception in the form of marketing.
I
And
do
it's
believe I can
disingenuous.
stand up. I do believe I can stand up and say you should do X, even though I didn't do X. Because, like, for example,
Does it make you credible though?
no, like let me give you an example. Let's say I have. A lot of billionaires didn't go to private schools. There's some billionaires that didn't go to private schools. They came up, they were born in poverty. The guy who owns Starbucks, right? Or who made Starbucks, he was from like the bottom of the bottom. He was a white guy, whatever. Now, he went through all the struggle and made it. Why would he just? So you're saying he's a hypocrite because he sent his kids to private school?
I'm saying if you're an advocate for it is what I'm saying. I think that what Dr. Umar is saying about Robert Smith is displaced. Let me tell you why. Robert Smith's platform is not that he is a civil rights activist, representative, advocate for the black community, right? He's just a regular black dude, billionaire, and he married a white woman. That's your business. What you're doing for black people, great, right? But for people who are trying to advocate and become like, oh, I'm an advocate, I'm a leader, I feel like you should be doing whatever it is that you're advocating. Because if you're not, how are you a leader in that? So I think Dr. Umar is just kind of like attacking him.
So why would people support Kamala?
I didn't really.
Well, I'm not saying you did. I'm just saying.
For me, one of my biggest grievances is that she was married to a white man.
Because I don't think Barack would have won without Michelle. I think Michelle was more important than actually Barack.
I would have taken Kamala more seriously in terms of whatever she was trying to do for black people if she was married to a black man. Because I feel like when you're the type of person who marries outside of your race, which there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want to do, right?
Hold on, let me put a little more context on this. Robert Smith married a black woman and she divorced him.
That's fine. And then when he remarried a white woman. And the reason is because Robert Smith,
he off the hook.
He probably doesn't see color. Like usually people who are willing to or want to marry somebody outside of their race on both sides, I feel like a lot of those couples, what they're agreeing on is that we're either not going to see race, right? Or we're not going to put it at the forefront of our relationship. It's not going to become.
I feel like as a black man, if you marry a black woman and she divorce you, it's free game. You can marry whoever you want.
You can marry whoever you want on the front.
I mean, yeah, but I'm just saying, like, on some activism type of vibe. Like,
To me,
if you divorce your black Michael Jordan, he had a black wife. She divorced him. He went and got a white girl. Everybody mad because now he a multi-billionaire. You should have stayed with him. Savannah, you need to stay with LeBron. Why would you divorce LeBron?
well, they had reasons for it. I mean, these men were like serial cheaters. Not talking about LeBron, but Michael Jordan.
Well, if you can't stay, if
The
you
man
can't,
was gambling away like half of his money at the time when he was still married to what's her name, Juanita. Like, so I just feel like creating equity in the black community starts with building strong families.
I mean,
And
I
just
agree
think,
with that.
I think that that's the quickest way to fix our community is to marry each other, build generational wealth together, raise strong black kids who are proud of their identity.
I got one
who
for you.
don't have to feel like I'm mixed.
Okay,
You know
I
what
got
mean?
one for
Like,
you. You just said you can't be a hypocrite. Umar said that he not married to a black woman. So whatever he say is,
But he lets it be known that when and if he does get married, that he's like focusing on marrying a black woman. If Dr. Umar got with a white woman tomorrow, I'd be like, bro, you're no longer credible in my eyes. Only because he's calling himself a leader of the black community. He's centering black issues and all of that stuff. So that's all I'm saying is like,
well,
if
but
you're
my
gonna
point is,
if you're
can
gonna
he
be
even
like that,
speak on that because he hasn't married a black woman? Like, can he even speak on somebody else or speak on marriage and give marriage advice? Like that one lady,
is he giving marriage advice beyond saying marry somebody that's in your race though?
I feel like he do,
Yeah.
but I'm gonna switch the topic to somebody else. This lady named Dr. Bryant. She go around giving relationship podcasts. All that. She ain't got no husband.
Uh-huh.
So I'm like, okay.
That's a little weird.
She go on all the relationship podcasts giving advice on
Oh,
marriage.
but she's a
and this.
psychiatrist though, I think. She's like a clinical psychologist, I think. So she's just giving a relationship advice from the perspective of being a therapist, psychologist, whatever she is. I don't want to give her the wrong title, but
Can you?
she's
I'm saying with that logic of you can't be a hypocrite. That's why I believe you can be a hypocrite and give real advice, but you doing something else. I can come out and be like, "Hey, y'all need to go, shop this brand or whatever," and I ain't never bought. Like I do it all the
she's
time.
not speaking against marriage though. She has aspirations of getting married. She just hasn't found her person. I think if she was saying, personally, I think marriage is terrible, but you all should get married. That's hypocritical. Or if she's saying you guys should never get married, but she is married, right? But she has aspirations of getting married. So does Dr. Umar. They just haven't found their person yet.
I just think I just think I don't agree with the fact that the best thing you can do for the black community is marry. I don't agree. I think there's other things you can do to help the black community that ain't got nothing to do with families. Like I think there are people from other races that can do things that ain't got nothing to do with marrying a black woman or marrying a black man that could really seriously help the black community, and it can be way higher than I just started a black family. Like that, if that's my if marrying a black woman or marrying a black man is like your biggest, if that's the biggest thing you can do for the black community, you ain't did shit. In my opinion, because I never seen. I'm gonna be honest. I never seen marrying a black woman as like a prize. It was just something I was always gonna do because that's who I'm attracted to. I never dated outside of my race, so like marrying a black woman is not like, oh my God, I'm so surprised. It's the best thing I ever did. I was gonna do that anyway because that's all I'm attracted.
That's just your preference?
That's just my preference. So like, I don't even look at that. I'm not gonna say marriage is an accomplishment, but
Is having a family an accomplishment?
yeah, for me, but it ain't for nobody else.
So then why wouldn't having a black family be an extra accomplishment? If having a nuclear family and marriage, if you look at it like do you look
It's
at
a
it from the
personal-
financial?
It's a personal accomplishment. It's not nothing that helping the black community though. I
Does it
don't-
help the community? Period.
I don't think so. I mean, just if I go out and have a bunch of kids, like how is that really helping the community?
That's what I'm asking you. Do you think that if you have two kids by two different women, it's the same thing as if you get married and have two children by your wife? Do you think it's kind of like whatever you want to do?
Oh, I mean, no,
Do you
that's
think
a
there's
personal.
value in having that family?
That's a personal. I think somebody who go out and have multiple kids by multiple women, and somebody who has, I feel like somebody who has multiple kids by multiple women can do just as good or even better raising that family or building those kids as somebody who has kids by the same woman. Because if I'm taking care of my kids. I'm spending time with my kids. We have a great relationship with the mom. I have a great relationship with both of them. They not beefed out, and we all good. They going to great schools. They become successful. Versus, yeah, I got kids by this one woman, but I'm slapping her every weekend. I'm abusing her mentally, physically in front of the kids. We getting put out the
You
house.
went
We on
far.
section.
You went far with it.
But you gotta go far. That's an extreme, and this is an
I
extreme.
mean, in terms
So
of healthy, situations. Do you think that having a healthy
if all
relationship with
things
your
equal-
wife,
if all
raising your
things
kids is
equals
the
healthy-
same as a healthy relationship with two women and you got two kids? If everything
If
is
all
healthy,
thing-
we're looking at it across the board. Do you think they're equal value?
I would say one is ideal
Why?
because it's just easier to manage. Like you ain't got to manage multiple people. You deal with personalities. One
Get
is
to wake
easier
up with your kids every day?
yeah. One is
Uh-huh.
easier to manage, but. My
'Cause-
benefit, I would say, as long as the kids are good.
But
I feel like you
how
good.
can the kids be good? Because here's what gets normalized, right? What gets normalized when we're not married, living under the same household, is you having your kids every other weekend. That's what gets normalized. What happens is you having your kids every other weekend and then every other Wednesday, right? So now that becomes, as long as you're picking them up every other weekend and every Wednesday, right? And you're doing a great job with them during the time that you have them, now you're a great dad, right? But it's kind of like, you're only a great dad because that's been normalized. Because in reality, a great dad is being in the house with your kids every single day. Because, hold on, do you have kids?
No.
Okay, so let me
Not
explain
yet.
to you from a parent perspective. Having a kid is a 24-hour job. It's not life is happening every single day, right?
Right.
So I can't have a job and tell them, oh, you guys want to hire me to come 5 days a week? I'm just going to come 2 days a week, and it's just as good. It's not just as good.
Right.
It's not just as good. If that's what the situation is, then that's what it is, right? But to say that it's the same or just as good is a complete lie. Because when I come home from from the hospital with a baby, right? That baby's gonna be waking up all night. And so
Right.
what happens is when me and you broke up before the baby was born, but you're still there at the birth, you cut the umbilical cord, you signed the birth certificate, right? We get along great, but you have a new girlfriend, right? What happens is that now I gotta go home with this newborn and I gotta wake up all night. And so when you try to explain to your new girlfriend that, hey, my baby mom, it has to wake up all night, so I'm gonna go ahead and spend the night at her house so that me and her can rotate these feedings.
That ain't gonna
The
happen.
new girlfriend is gonna be like, no,
no.
you're not,
That
because
ain't
right
gonna
now
happen.
I'm your woman and I'm the priority, right? So what ends up happening is that whoever the new woman is that has the new kid that you live with, those kids are always going to be prioritized. Those are going to be the ones that always see you. And so what happens is that kids grow up with all these different psychological issues because their dad wasn't there every day. Did he really love me? Why didn't he try to work it out with my mom? And therapy bills and adult love attachment issues and all of these things. And so I'm not judging people who aren't married with kids. I'm one of them, right? But what I'm saying is that knowing what I know, I wouldn't glorify or promote it at all because it's just not a healthy thing. And I think that that's one of the things that's destroying our community too, is kids not growing up with a dad in the household every day, because men bring a lot to the table in terms of raising
course.
kids when it comes to discipline. They bring a lot to the table. We like to put money on it. Oh, if it's not money, then you're not offering anything else.
Nah,
I can have a 2-year-old child, right? And he can be getting ready to touch something, and I'll say, don't do that. Don't touch. And they're going to touch it anyway. As soon as a man be like, hey, don't touch that. They look up. They're like, oh, let me not. And this is a toddler, right? This is not an older child that has logic, reasoning. Because they heard that bass in that voice, it made them turn around and be like, let me not do that. The presence of the dad. When you tell kids,
Yeah, the presence is definitely
I'm gonna
important.
tell your mom. Oh, I'm gonna tell your dad. Wait till he get home.
I guess my point was you can
So-
be present.
No, you can't.
You can be present.
part time. Those are your kids, man. You need to want to be there every single day. When you're setting out to have a kid, the goal needs
I think
to be.
that's the problem. Though. I
wanna
think
be
it's
there
either
for
all
them
or
every day.
nothing. A lot of times it either be all or nothing because a lot of women say, I would say it's better to have a part-time present dad than just no dad at all.
But why are we reducing it down to that?
Well,
when
because
we
it's
can,
not just-
we can strive for more. And
It's not like the woman don't go get another guy. So you do got a full-time dad. You got this part-time stepdad, and you got your full-time dad. Like
That's not ideal. It's not
It's
the
not,
healthiest,
but-
best thing. And like I said, the way to prevent it is to prevent it. Is to look at it on the front end. You know?
man. Hey man, we can go on for hours, man. We've been on here probably longer than we supposed to. So
Yeah, 10 different topics.
it's daily, right? We're gonna be doing this daily. So make sure you guys subscribe to the YouTube channel, or if you're listening on audio, Make sure you subscribe there. Share this out. Share the content. Make sure you follow our wonderful co-hosts. Make sure you follow us on Instagram. I'm gonna put all that in the description down below. And we had a wonderful conversation. If you guys have any topics that you want us to discuss, make sure you shoot the Black Millionaires Instagram page at DM so we can come with the topics. We have so many topics to go over that we didn't even go over all of our topics, but we got time because we're going to be active on here, and it's the Black Millionaires Digital Daily Show, so you're going to get all the content that you need.
Period.
Peace.